Hey there, folks. A bit of an impromptu video, bit of an unplanned one. I have some other stuff that I've planned on, actually some stuff that I've already shot that I'm looking forward to that'll be a little bit more fun than this. But I'm not gonna sit by and let this happen unremarked, because while I don't like talking about the gender critical movement at all, but I especially don't like to focus on them excessively because it's draining and exhausting and nobody should be giving them attention. Sometimes there are moments where you realize, okay, people need to realize this. So, for those of you unaware, the gender critical movement is the current rebranding of TERFs. They did take ownership of that phrase initially, but then when there started to be a taint on it, they claimed it was a slur and have opted for gender critical. I, for one, am curious as to what the next rebrand is going to be, because people are realizing gender critical is the exact same thing and toxic for the exact same reasons. So they're going to have to rebrand eventually again, but we'll see. Right now, gender critical is still the term. Now, gender critical movement is a purportedly feminist movement railing against the rights or the presumed expansion of rights of trans people, specifically trans women. And while they will take attention to trans men, it's generally in the sense of these people have been brainwashed and they're just butch lesbians. So it is infantilizing and diminishing and dismissing of trans men and treating trans women as predatory. While they are far from the only people coming after us, they are an interesting subset of those people who are targeting the trans community, because they claim to do so in the name of protecting women's rights and in the name of feminism. Now, this is different than just purporting that this is somehow an abomination, or that we're demonic, or that we're groomers, though they will frequently claim we are groomers. But their lens is not specifically through the framing of protect the children, which is more the general amorphous mass that is the right. That's sort of their main angle. Whereas the gender critical movement is much more focused primarily on women and women's rights, and how trans women are impeding on women's rights, either by the things that they are asking for recognition, or just by existing at all. And it gets very ugly. So here's the thing I wanted to bring attention to, in case you missed it. I don't recommend hanging out a ton on Twitter. I actually don't do it nearly as much as some people seem to assume I do, but I am on there. It's a cesspool. But every now and then, something that's trending on Twitter can open your eyes to something. And I don't mean in that, like, oh, this trend made me realize. I was like, no, the fact that it's trending brought my eyes to it, and I went, oh, okay. If you're not familiar with the individual Graham Linehan, otherwise known as Glinner on Twitter, he is probably the most prominent male gender critical, or, sort of figure within that movement. I'm not going to go through the whole thing with him, but short version, he used to be well known for creating a number of British series. He has not actually done any writing since 2017. So far as I can tell, he only lives on Twitter and on podcasts to complain about trans women, to the point that it actually impacted his home life. And while I refuse to dig into it enough to find this for certain, I've certainly seen claims that his level of bigotry was part of what drove his divorce.
I'm living in a flat now because eventually the pressure of all this drove my wife and I apart.
Like, being transphobic seems to have basically become this guy's entire life. And there was an exchange that happened on Twitter where he quote tweeted someone who brought up having a hormonal condition, and as a result, she has more body hair than is normal, has a thinning hairline. And his response was to say, look, you're just a man. We know you're just a man. Yeah, this is actually a really big problem and worth highlighting. Now, the condition that this person had, I believe specifically she had PCOD, which is also very similar to PCOS. Now, those aren't the exact same condition, but they're very, very, very similar. It's polycystic ovarian disease and polycystic ovary syndrome. So they are very connected, they're very similar, and they have a lot of crossover in terms of symptoms. And those symptoms can include excessive body hair, including facial hair, changes in weight, irregular periods, thinning hair even to the point of mirroring male pattern baldness, and high testosterone levels. So, to be clear, PCOS is a condition that is related to your hormone balance and your ovaries in particular. So the only people who get it are people with ovaries. So these are people who, as far as gender critical views are, these people are women. Now, of course, trans men can have this condition, non-binary people can have this condition, anyone with ovaries can have this condition. I am going to filter this conversation primarily through the lens of cisgender women, i.e. women who identify as the gender they were assigned at birth. So, born, it's a girl, and they identified as a woman for their entire life. I'm going to focus on that because it's that element that really gives away the game of what is going on and what this reveals. So understand that this person on Twitter, and indeed the majority of people with PCOS or PCOD, are cisgender women. They have been women for their whole lives, and he just said he will disregard them and based off what he believes he sees, which again can include thinning hair, body hair, and they frankly do have more testosterone. But they're still women if they identify as such, but especially from the point of view of gender criticals who are hard focused on the idea that what you were assigned at birth is what you are. Period and forever. So from their view, these are women. They can't be anything else. But he immediately started to refer to her as a man. The thing is, I know I'm zeroing in on this one particular incident, but it's illustrative of something that is happening. There's a term within the trans community called transvestigators. People who, well, they love to just try and look for the clues that someone who claims and identifies as a cisgender person, that they're somehow secretly transgender. And the way this usually manifests is by calling cis women men because they don't match a certain standard of beauty. Because they have narrow hips. Because they have more body hair. Because they have a gender build that is not considered as feminism. Because they have thinning hair on their head. They will be called men. Another somewhat recent incident that I think ties into this actually happened with Erin Dark. And this is Daniel Radcliffe's, I believe they're engaged? I don't know the exact relationship. Daniel Radcliffe's partner, who is currently pregnant with their child. And there was a thing on Twitter, which I did jump in on and laugh at, but she was implied to be a man by a gender-critical person based off two things. Her appearance and the fact that Daniel Radcliffe is supportive of trans people, vocally. Immediately implying that this woman is a man. Now, so far as I'm aware, Erin Dark does not have PCOS or PCOD, but both of these things connected, they help make the point that the gender-critical movement, the TERF movement, whatever you wish to call it, is not and has never been a feminist movement.
No, I'm not a feminist. I'm not a feminist.
Because feminism is and must be about making a better world, protecting the rights of, defending and standing up for all women. That's what feminism is. Now, does it often fall short? In certain instances, implementations, yeah. There's a reason white feminism gets a lot of criticism, but the purpose of feminism is to lift up all women. And even if you're going to say, well, trans women aren't women, so they don't count, which you're wrong, but for the moment, let's go with that. Okay. But they're throwing aside cis women. They're throwing aside women assigned female at birth, lived as women their whole lives, are women. They have ovaries. But you will discard them as men because it is seen as either acceptable collateral damage, or in the case of someone like Aaron Dark, if you're not on their side, they will find a reason to dismiss you as a man. They will rob someone of their womanhood, not just trans women or trans people, because again, clarification, not a trans woman, gender fluid, but they will remove the right to femininity, the ability to claim womanhood, from not only trans women, but any woman who disagrees with them or does not match their standard of beauty and what they think a woman is supposed to look like. They don't care if someone has a medical condition that makes them, in the eyes of these people, look more manly. They don't care about them. They don't care about butch lesbians making a choice to appear more masculine, but who are still very much women and own the label of woman. They don't care if those people are excluded because they look mannish. They don't care. This is not about feminism. This is not about defending, protecting all women. This is about gatekeeping womanhood. And it starts with excluding trans women. But oh, how quickly they find reasons to discard anyone else they don't like, or anyone else who doesn't fit their view of what a woman is. It goes beyond that even, because with current changes in some sports organizations to testing for testosterone levels, which is, again, in theory supposed to weed out trans people, there are cisgender athletes who are going to be excluded because they have a condition that gives them a higher testosterone level than is standard for women. And they're being barred from women's sports, even though they are women, were assigned female at birth, identify as women, have all the internal workings that mean, by the definition of these gender critical people, they have to be women. They can't be anything else. By their terms, are being excluded because they have too much testosterone. And before anybody goes into that, well, that gives them an advantage. First of all, that's heavily disputed. Second of all, even if that's true, so what? Again, we're not talking trans women right now. We're talking about cisgender women with higher testosterone levels. If that gives them a natural advantage, so what? Isn't the point of sport to allow people with a natural inclination, with a natural ability to perfect themselves and raise themselves to the highest level that they can attain? Isn't that the point? Because if it's not, then what are we even doing? The idea of removing a cisgender woman's ability to compete in a sport because her testosterone level is too high, then you are gatekeeping what a woman is. Because they're not going to suddenly let these athletes start competing in the men's division. And they aren't asking to, and they don't want to. This started as an attack on trans women, but it's about gatekeeping womanhood. And they will exclude an increasing number of cis women, either because they are in a minority because of conditions they have and they are considered collateral damage, or because they don't fit a certain standard of appearance, or because gender critical people just don't like them and will simply lie and imply that they are men. That is what they will do. That is what they are doing. Whatever it is you think about the gender critical movement, at the very least, will you please recognize that it's not a feminist movement? Even if you find yourself leaning into some kind of support for them, which, if you're this far into the video, I can't imagine you do, but if on the off chance they're making the active decision to either target or at least cause passive harm to women, and they know what's happening and they don't care, or they want it, it's not a feminist movement. It can't be. So I just needed to get that out there because it's It's not that often that I get such a clean example to be able to highlight something that I can try and explain about something like the gender critical movement, but sometimes they illustrate it better than I ever could. And they did it with this. Well, that was not fun. I don't know what that was, but that was a thing. Whatever your thoughts are on that, I hope that you will share them respectfully. And more than anything, I hope that you remember that you are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved. Take care out there.